Good morning, everybody. How y'all doing? Uh, Happy Sunday. I'm tired. I'm sorry. I should have a little bit more energy when I click go transition, go live, and all that stuff. Bless you. Uh, what's up, chat? I know that we've got Shane Lalonde in first, chatting with Trail Dust and Mr. Burnell. And Ben Toombs pops in, much to the dismay of the general populace. How you doing, Ben? Bortagov, Jeff Killian, Steve Parsons, Robert Whitney, and yeah. Yes, Steve, we are talking Egyptian mayonnaise. I found a jar of first Dynasty mayonnaise, and I'm going to crack it open and put it on some toast and eat it. No, I'm not. Uh, so yeah, I suppose we could start out. First I would like to say we have a lot more viewers than I thought we would. Hello to you lurkers as well. I know it is a holiday weekend. It is Memorial Day weekend. Everybody's barbecuing and hanging out and playing. I believe it's also, historically the first day of, summer when you think of, blah, 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 blah. It's when pools open on Memorial Day, when the beach is open and all that fun stuff. So I'm sure most people are going to be setting up their slip and slides and playing lawn darts because that's just what people do. So we'll try and make this a fun, quick show where we're here for you guys every Sunday, day in, day out. I mean, it could be a meteor shower going on and we'd still be live.
So
The
thanks for
apocalypse.
joining us, for all of you that have decided to join us today. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for bringing the energy. You know, as our Vegemite on avocado toast down under eater. I don't know.
I don't even like it. Oh. So let's go through the people who have actually joined us. So Shane Lalonde, Trail Dust,
I did that
John
already.
Brunel. Have you gone through everyone? Bem too? Oh, you did. My bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm running on lack of sleep, guys.
Me too.
Yesterday so let's get into how was your week, Jammers. Let's start.
Yes.
Who wants? Do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
I guess I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead and start, and it'll be a good explanation of why I was late today. 1 minute. Stop freaking out. Hey, Eric. So yeah. As pretty much same verses. The first last week and this week. Busy at work. Like I'm talking. A lot of stuff going on at work. I actually thought about going live while I was at work yesterday, tossing the phone up in the joist and the rafters and the wood and watching me, walk around wire boxes and stuff. But nobody wanted to see that. But yeah. Let me see. I got another code course today, I believe. And beta testing a game today, and then we've got a storm coming in, which is actually going to start here probably in about half hour, 45 minutes. It's been raining all morning, actually raining all day yesterday too, and I might have to jump up midstream and shut windows, but we'll see. So yeah, I am doing my best to hang in there. We've got our resident therapist and psychologist on hand to let us know how his week has been.
Well, my week's been flat out. As I said, I believe last Sunday, my brother and his wife have been visiting from the UK. They're gone now. So they spent, arrived Monday night. my time. And they flew out yesterday during the day. Now this weekend I was actually supposed to be at a show doing a presentation called French Pass, which is like a rural show, or rural county fair, or whatever your equivalent is over there in the US. But unfortunately, that found out on Friday. Unfortunately, that our participation that got cancelled, or my group's participation that got cancelled, because one of our key members of the group is actually working away, and they had all the information. It was a bit hard for them to organise everything whilst they are interstate, and they weren't going to be able to make it back in time in order to participate. So that made the organisation for this weekend a little bit difficult. But I'm kind of glad that it did get cancelled, in the sense of I got to spend that little bit extra time with my brother while he was here. I haven't seen him since my wedding, and I haven't seen his wife since their wedding, which is going back about 4 years ago. So it's been a while. So I got to spend some quality time with them. Took them out to see a few of the wonderful sites that we've got here in the Northern Territory of Australia. Went out to a place called Cascade Falls in Litchfield. Spent a lot of quality time with him and my father. For those that aren't aware, my father is terminally ill, but he's still kicking. He's outlived his termination date so far. So every day that we've got at the moment is a blessing. So particularly my brother was able to make over and spend some time with him was a good thing. But yeah, apart from that, just been an absolute flat out week. Of course, with them in, we've had a full house here, and then of course spending all that time. I'm exhausted because playing tour guide can be very exhausting. I'm sure everyone's had family visit from elsewhere at some stage, and then had them do the whole touristy thing. Of course, that is, unless of course you live, you live in the same place where your family has been for generations. But that's okay too. There's nothing against that. But so I've had to play tour guide and do a hell of a lot of driving and late nights and early mornings, and one or two adult beverages. And then added to that was also my dad's birthday in that time, and also ramping up for my 37th birthday, which is in a couple of weeks. So and then of course now I'll go back onto getting ready for changeover to go back to work for the next week, which is fun. So so that's pretty much been my week. Finally, this is the room. So my office, this is the room that my brother was staying in, him and his wife. So mad rush today to clean this up and make it all presentable again, so I can get back to doing work and of course being the podcast. But I've also doing work on my book. I haven't done anything on my book for a week, and that's really, really frustrating for me.
Yeah, a lot of Febreze.
No, we've had the windows open. It's been lovely and cool. So actually I've got the window closed tonight because I've got the lights on, and in this time of year when you have the lights on inside and the windows open, we've got these tiny little back bugs that could get through bug mesh or fly screen on the windows. So the room would literally be swarming with bugs at the moment if the light was on and I had the window open. So I'm going to have to turn the air conditioner on so that I don't sweat. You can see a slight sheen on my forehead at the moment.
We call them either no-see-ums or midges down in Florida. Midges.
Yeah, no, they're not. We have a bug that's called midgies here, which are sand flies, which they pee on you and it like stings or burns. It feels like biting. These aren't them. These are tiny, tiny little black bugs. They're thinner than the mesh.
No-see-ums.
Not exactly. Yeah.
In Florida, we call them no-see-ums. Huh?
No, these things aren't. These things don't bite. They're just bugs. They're just a beetle that's attracted to the light. They're just really, really small.
I wish I could pull up
Mike, every time you call them no-see-ums, I'm like, they're freaking called sandflies, man.
Nope, no-see-ums. Look up the Florida no-see-um.
It's a sandfly.
Yeah, it's a sandfly or a midgie. We have them very similar, but it's not those that I'm talking about. These are actually.
it's a matter of semantics. Like, a Coca-Cola, pop, soda. I mean, different. Yes, it's technically a Coca-Cola, but depends on where you're at. They might call it soda, sody water, or pop, or who knows. But yeah, sandfly is the actual common name for the insect, and
Yeah.
I mean, not the one you're talking about there, Adam, but the one that Yamez is talking about.
Nope.
Yeah. So I've got my windows closed. So I just had to turn the aircon on so I don't end up with big wet patches under my arms and stuff like that. So yeah. But getting back to it, yeah. So I'm finally able to do some work on my book tonight, which has been a week off because I haven't been able to get into the room to actually do it. Which is really, really annoying because I've now started on the fun part where I'm actually starting to put everything together and editing and stuff like that, rather than just the pure research that I've been at for the last few months. So yeah, that's me. What about you, Silly?
I came back to work on. I drove back Sunday evening, and man, I've been hard at it all week, like 17, 18, 23-hour days, 90 hours for the week, give or take. And I was still off yesterday. So, the yesterday didn't have to work. I was supposed to, but the job that I'm on now was originally scheduled for yesterday and it pushed off to today. So I got the chance to go to lunch with a friend of mine from Wyoming that I hadn't seen in 10 or 11 years. She was my neighbor up in Wyoming, and I ran across her on location a few weeks back moving a rig, and I was like, oh, hey, we ought to go have lunch sometimes. We were able to put that together yesterday, and so we sat down at Buffalo Wild Wings and had a couple adult beverages and some wings, and caught up on what the last decade has been to the two of us, and that was a lot of fun. And other than that, I've been. I finally I've got all of my stuff here for my gallery project, and if I get another day off this week, I'm gonna actually get a little bit of work on that. I'm still trying to figure out. I've got several ways I can do my next 3 pieces. I mean, it's all going to be one piece, but it's going to be in 3 pieces. And one set is done. I got 2 more to go, and I'm still kind of in the air about how I'm going to do them. I mean, it's like I could do them this way, or I could do them this way. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And whatever one I start with is what I'm going to have to do because they're radically different. And once I start one thing, and I've only got so much material that I cannot replace that I'm using this for. So if I have to pick one. And then I'm committed. I mean, there's no going back. There's no change in my mind, and there's no more material. So it's like I'm nervous to actually start because it's like why did I pick material that has no more supply? I don't know, but yeah, it is what it is, I guess. That's my week. That's all I got.
Yeah. Sorry. I zoned out.
Hold on, I take that back. I could get material, some new material, if I walked over to the crane and smacked the boom with a sledgehammer really hard. Then they'd have to cut a chunk out of it.
So why not do that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be like a $30,000 bill. Yeah, no.
So, with that,
with that, we're going to go ahead and call that a show.
Yep. Thank you all for showing up, and that wraps up. No, today we wanted to talk about a 4th aspect of Egyptian metallurgy, culture, and all that stuff. Iron. Now, unfortunately for us blacksmiths, iron wasn't a major staple. It wasn't really in the forefront of
commodity.
It wasn't it wasn't really in the forefront for Egypt. So there's not much. We have hinted and chatted about it occasionally. The iron, the meteor. Iron meteor iron, or whatever, however phrasing, whatever vernacular dagger of King what's his nuts? Was it
Tutankhamun.
Yeah, King Toots.
Tutankhamun meteoric iron.
Yeah, King Toots iron dagger.
Toots.
And so we're gonna discuss that a little bit, and that's probably one of the more famous iron artifacts of the Egyptian dynasties. And then we do a little bit of a wrap up and kind of re-go over what we've already discussed and talk to you chat people about did anybody do anything what we've been talking about. I did, but yeah. So with that, anybody got any info on this famous meteor dagger? The way I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the way I understand it is an alien dagger fell from the sky and King Toots picked it up and became pharaoh for 100 years. Am I wrong? I think I'm wrong. But that's the way I see.
I'd like to point out, I don't have any information in front of me. I'm just going off the top of my head, the research I did earlier in the month.
That's fine with, yep.
So from my understanding, okay, so this is a meteoric dagger. Obviously we all know what that means. And we know that because of the crystalline structure of the metal and the fact that it's like 20% nickel. And iron ore on Earth is typically only found between 4 and 5% nickel. Now in this particular case, I mean, if you think about it, way back then in the days of Tutankhamun, they had the ability to heat that meteorite up hot enough and then hammer it into shape and grind an edge on it. I mean, like they forged a blade out of a meteorite. I don't know how many. I don't remember what dynasty Tutankhamun was, so I can't really say. I don't know the time frame, if that was 2,000 years BC or 3,000. I don't have that off the top of my head.
I could pull it up if we need it.
It's not really all that important. I mean, but they forged iron. You know what I mean? It wasn't just like they found it and went, oh, we could just sharpen this right here and it'd make a neat knife. It was intentionally shaped the way it was. And then as well, during the excavation of the ruins around the base of the pyramid, there were 15 iron stoneworking tools recovered in those ruins, which are in the Cairo Museum of Natural History. So we know they were working with iron tools to some extent. So, and
1300s BC, 1300 BC. Yeah,
okay.
like 1333 BC.
Right on. Okay, so that's that's still what 800 years before the official start of the Iron Age, or the what is it? Arbitrary start of the Iron Age. That's all I have on it off the top of my head.
Yeah, this is, and again, why we wanted to mix this with the wrap up was because we didn't want to go through this without discussing iron, being blacksmiths.
Now, there's, I read some articles as well that talked about they even used iron weaponry to a limited extent for more like the equivalent of whatever their generals or whatever was, or the leaders of groups of people. They would have iron blades and whatnot, whereas the conscripts or the foot soldiers or whatever would be dealing mostly with bronze. And so there was mention of that, but I could not find corroborating documentation and corroborating artifacts. So I read that they did that, but I could not find proof of it. So that is, that could be speculation. That could be evidence based. I can't say.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And look, so one thing that we do know is, as Sally was saying, as Alexis was saying, that the oldest iron that we have proof of working is meteoric iron. So of those, 9 small tubular beads were found in graves at Gaza. It's a pre-dynastic cemetery, about 70 kilometers or 43 miles south of Cairo, and they were discovered in between 1911 and 1912, and are dated to 3,600 to 3,300 BC. They significantly predate the earliest evidence for iron smelting in Egypt, which is thought to have begun around the 5th or 6th century. Now, that's not to say that the iron, like as we discussed in previous live streams, the iron wasn't smelted via glass and via copper production. It's just that dedicated iron smelters and evidence of working irons, of working iron mines and the like, weren't discovered in the remains of those date back to the Roman times, the Roman occupation of Egypt, as opposed to pre-dynastic or early dynastic, middle dynastic periods. Now, initial analysis of these beads highlighted a high nickel content, which, as Sully has said in previous live stream, that they were extraterrestrial or meteoritic in origin. This was disputed in the 1980s when it was proposed that many examples of prehistoric iron use worldwide, previously thought to be made from meteors, could actually represent early attempts at smelting. Now, 9 iron beads found at Gaza were studied by the Open University and University of Manchester, and has finally laid to rest decades of debate, confirming the bead's material is indeed meteoric. Researchers used a combination of scanning, electron microscopy, and micro X-ray computer tomography to examine the internal structure and chemical makeup of the bead, revealing a distribution of metal bands and oxide consistent with weathered iron meteorite. Now, meteorites have a unique microstructural and chemical fingerprint because when they cooled incredibly slowly as they traveled through space. Philip Withers, a professor of material science at the University of Manchester, said it was really interesting to find the fingerprint turn up in early Egyptian artifacts. Now, other lecturers say that iron, first and foremost, we today see iron first and foremost as practical rather than a dull metal, but to ancient Egyptians, it was a rare and beautiful material as it fell from the sky, which had magical and or religious properties. They therefore used this remarkable metal to create small objects of beauty and religious significance, which was so important to them that they chose to include them in their graves. Now, analysis of the dagger found in Tutankhamun's tomb also gives strong evidence that this was the case, that early Egyptians knew iron had come from the sky. But why did they use such an unusual source for the material when there was plenty of iron here on Earth? Until recently, we didn't think that Egyptians were particularly good at producing iron objects until late in history, around 500 BC. There's no archaeological evidence for significant iron working anywhere in the Nile Valley. Even large amounts of iron-rich smelting products were found in the Delta region, could have actually been produced by early attempts at making copper. When Tutankhamun died 800 years later, iron was rarer than gold. And of course, that gave it high ceremonial value, also high commercial value at the time. As we know, gold was a relatively common thing, as we discussed previously, in Egypt, and gold working Egyptians were very established gold workers. So iron would have been seen something as more precious than gold. So the most common natural resource on Earth is iron and iron ores, rocks that contain iron chemically bonded to other elements. These, as we know, need to be processed by eating them with other materials, it's just being smelting, in order to extract low-quality form of iron, which is then beaten with hammers to remove impurities. This requires considerable know-how and effort and tools that we have no evidence for in ancient Egypt. Of course, that's no evidence of direct now, we know that they were fantastic metal workers, but we just have no direct evidence of
them actually working it.
specialized tools for actually just working iron.
Yes.
Now, there are abundant supplies of iron ore in both Egypt and the Sinai Peninsula, and textual sources indicate that Egyptians were aware of the metal from early in their history, but ore was mostly used to create pigments for art and makeup. One explanation for this may be the readily accessible iron ores were of poor quality and couldn't be worked into useful metal. But iron doesn't just come from iron ore. We have numerous prehistoric societies worldwide that did not have access to ores or knowledge of the smelting made use of metallic iron found in the occasional meteorite. This precious gift from nature still required shaping into a useful form and often resulting in very basic iron objects such as thin metal pieces that could be used as blades or bent into shape. If ancient Egyptians knew that iron could be found in meteorites that came from the sky, the place of the gods, it may have been symbolically important to them as well. As a result, they could have seen iron as a divine material that wasn't appropriate to be worked into a practical everyday form that should only be reserved for high status people, just as Sully was explaining before. Meteorites may have even played a more direct role in state religion. For example, the Ben stone worshipped in the sun temple of the god Ra at Heliopolis is thought to have possibly been a meteorite. The word Ben is derived from the verb weben, meaning to shine. The ancient language also offers clues as to how iron was perceived by the ancient Egyptians, that they knew meteorites were a source of the metal. The earliest hieroglyphic word for iron was greatly debated by translators who frequently confused the words for copper and iron. The word Ba was eventually translated as iron, but it could easily have referred to a range of hard, dense iron-like materials. The word we use in many texts, including the word was used in many texts, including the funerary pyramid texts, early religious writings dating from approximately 2375 BC, but likely to have been composed far earlier. So this is pre-pyramid. Carved on the internal walls of some pyramids. These textual references to iron connect it with aspects of the sky and with the bones of the dead king, who will live forever as an undying star in the sky. Now, that also links to previous speculation that iron may have actually been used in the construction of the pyramid in tooling, because whilst I've just said previously that it wouldn't have been used in mundane items, in the construction of a pyramid, it would no longer be an mundane item. This was something built for their living god kings. So therefore, if they used those tools, particularly if they were used by specialist masons and stuff like that, which were overseen or blessed by their priests, then of course it was in creating a religious or honorary artifact for or thing for the god king. Therefore, it's not a stretch to imagine that these iron tools could have been used in the creation of the pyramids as well. So bear that in mind. Now, from the beginning of the 19th dynasty, approximately 1295 BC, a new hieroglyphic word appeared for iron appeared, Bi-and-put, which translates as iron from the sky. Why this new word appears in its exact form at this time is unknown, but it was later applied to all metallic iron. An obvious explanation for the sudden emergence of the word would be major impact event or a large shower of meteorites. Now, this is also known to happen because, we do pass through, there's a meteoric storm every, I think it's every year or every 2 years that we pass through on our orbit, the Earth's orbit. Now, of course, at that period, we may have passed particularly close and had an actual meteor shower or impact event, which would have led to an increase in iron. Now, Alexis wants to say something.
Sorry, I was on mute. No, I was gonna point out that our annual meteor showers that we have, there's 4 or 5 a year, I think. Lyrids, Perseids, Orinids, all of those are debris from comets, like the comet trails that we pass through. Those are primarily like just grains of dust and ice. And the iron meteorites would be asteroids, so they're not necessarily things that they wouldn't come in on a regular basis. They're sporadic, and they're coming in out of the asteroid belt at just from some random interaction or what have you. So meteorites that hit the ground are typically originate in the asteroid belt, both chondrites and iron meteorites. Like I said, the annual meteor showers are typically comet related.
Fair enough. But on that same note, further that, meteor strikes on Earth aren't that common. I mean, we've had several, relatively notable ones in the last few years, particularly that one that happened with the airburst over Siberia. That was only 10, 15 years ago, that flattened the forest. And so these things aren't uncommon in modern history, let alone, particularly a significant event like that in the past would have been, well known as well, particularly if it was, relatively close to somewhere populated like the Nile River Delta. So this would have been witnessed by much of the ancient Egyptian population, leaving little uncertainty as to where the mysterious iron came from. One possible candidate for that event was the Gebel Camel meteorite impact in southern Egypt, although its exact date remains unknown. Based upon nearby archaeology, we know it has occurred within the last 5,000 years. So, also, iron is also connected to ritual artifacts, such as those used in the opening of the mouth ceremony, a ritual performed at the entrance of a tomb designed to transform the mummy into a latent being with potential for life. Later texts, including temple inventories that reference the equipment used in this ceremony, refer to the iron blades used as the 2 stars. It may be that iron was allowed an important role in the ceremony because of the association with iron meteorites, powerful natural phenomena whose known inherent power might have increased the potency of the ritual. Excuse me, but also because it was seen as being, bones or attached to the gods, that this was allowed to be used on mummies. We also know that iron dagger blades were important enough to be mentioned in diplomatic correspondence. The best known example is a letter from King Tushratta of Mitanni, today in northern Iraq and Syria, detailing a dowry of his daughter who was sent as a bride to Tutankhamun's grandfather, King Amenhotep III. This letter intriguingly refers to a dagger blade of Habokinu, a poorly documented word derived from the ancient Hittite language, which some linguists have translated as steel. Only further detailed analysis of the chemistry and microstructure of other artifacts of the period will tell us if meteorites were a common source of iron that the ancient Egyptians produced. We also need to determine when and where and how the smelting of terrestrial iron ore started in Egypt to further guide us in knowledge of the origins, evolution and specific techniques of ancient Egyptian metalworking technology. By combining this with our knowledge of the cultural importance of iron, we can start to develop a realistic understanding and the true value of this metal in ancient Egypt. Now, as I just stated, we don't know when exactly and where exactly iron smelting happened in Egypt. We also don't have enough dating, enough chemical and structural evidence of the iron that is there to make a blanket statement that they only used meteoric iron in ancient Egypt. We do, as we've said in previous podcasts, we know that the temperatures and in melting of glass and the smelting of copper can reach temperatures that are used in the smelting of iron, and that iron may have been the byproduct of actual copper production, because we know they use copper going back to pre-dynastic times, or at least early dynastic times. So because of that, that leap isn't too far. But we don't have enough evidence. The scientific community doesn't have enough evidence to say yes, the ancient Egyptians used iron a long time ago. So we kind of stuck with going
on speculation.
We know the Egyptians used it in this period forward, so we can say they used it in this period forward. And prior to that, we can say they used meteoric iron because we've got evidence for that and we don't have evidence for anything else. that may just be the lack of of the chemistry and of the metallurgical the structures, the crystalline structures and stuff like that. But there's also comes to that fact that up until this point in time, a lot of those tests determining that information were destructive, and we don't want to destroy ancient artifacts. So we couldn't test those ancient artifacts until now to get that structure. So as time moves forward, we will start to develop a bit more of an understanding of the of ancient Egyptian metallurgy when it comes to iron, which I think is really exciting, because all we need to find is that one or two pieces of ancient iron that they can date to early and pre-dynastic period, which will literally reshape world history, in the sense of, if they find something like that, they will say, wow, it wasn't the ancient Hittites and stuff like that that came up with the how early iron. The ancient Egyptians came up with it first, which would be really interesting. And we don't have any proof of that. We've only got speculation, and all this might have happened, but of course there's no proof, so we can't say it with any level of confidence. So
Yeah, confidence.
we don't say it with any level of confidence. It's all speculation here. But so that's my little thing on iron. We do know, as we've discussed previously, the ancient Egyptians were expert metal workers in copper and bronze. There wasn't really any tin there, but we do know they also worked in lead, and they worked in gold and gold alloys. So those, of course, those skills would have probably transferred over into iron, insofar as they would have had to learn, and probably knew from working meteoric iron, that it's opposite to all those other metals, where a lot of other metals work harden. We know that you've got to heat up and work iron at its hot state, as opposed to being able to work a lot of those other metals in their annealed cold state. But it may have also been a process of trial and error as well with that, in the sense of they probably worked iron like copper and like bronze and like a lot of other metals to begin with in a annealed and cold state, which also would have increased the value of iron, in the sense that it's harder to work in that state. As we all know, anyone who's hit iron or mild steel with a hammer while it's cold knows it's not very easy to move. So imagine, feel a little bit of sympathy for those ancient iron workers that were working out how to use this material and working it like copper.
I mean, I've done the whole beat a piece of steel till it gets red hot and then light a fire. I've done that. I have.
But imagine working something from, working a piece of, for example, a piece of meteoric iron, or a solid block of iron, and manipulating it out into all the wonderful things that they made out of everything else. Imagine doing that cold. That would be an absolute headache.
Right.
I was gonna mention, Giannis, do you remember that time you used the force to heat up your metal?
Yep. Heck, I've heated up the metal with my mind. It works. You just have to, it requires a lot of popped blood vessels and concentration. But I mean, I don't have that kind of concentration anymore. The only concentration I have right now is concentrated orange juice.
I say that was a lot. I had a lot of fun doing that one where I hit the metal until it was hot, and then lit my fire with it.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
That was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah. So, with that, like Adam said, we've had a couple. I am glad to say that there is a small percentage of our viewership that actually don't like us talking about history, and comment as such. But we do try to we do try to talk about blacksmithing and the history and whatnot. And one thing that we had discussed early on at kind of the intro to this history of metalworking segments that we're doing is the speculation. Like, now, I'd like to take just a few minutes before we wrap up Egypt and say where, in a brief paragraph, where do you think, Adam and Alexis, where do you think Egyptian culture or world culture, or the world technologies would be if they did have, like, ipso facto, the technology and the means, even though they didn't have the necessity at the time? But what if they did have iron working, iron work like we did? Like, if they do, or whatever, if they did, speculative.
Would you like to go first, Sally?
Sure.
Just a brief thought on where you think it would be,
Well, I hadn't actually thought of this, so it's kind of
out of left field. I know.
Yeah. I think, man, it's hard to say because really, I mean, I don't know that it would have made much of a difference
Right.
in the grand scheme of things. You know what I mean? Because at the time, I mean, like the civilizations probably, most likely, I don't know, but I'm off the top of my head riffing, would have dwindled into non-existence for the most part. I mean, like, there were the big dynasties and all that, and then everything kind of got smaller as dynasties collapsed and whatnot. And I think a lot of that has to do with like drought and famine, and your level of ironwork maybe can't really do a whole lot about your entire environment changing from a lush farmland to a unforgiving desert. There's not really a whole lot that iron's going to do for you in that respect. I mean, you just kind of got to pick up and move, and that's.
I'm kind of right there with you. I'm kind of right there with you. If I may take over for a sec, if you look at what we've discussed over this entire month, they did pretty damn good with their working with copper, bronze, and gold and silver. They were a trade hub essentially for that area. They had enough gold that other cultures and other societies and other dynasties and whatnot wanted to trade with them, and I really don't think that what iron or being blacksmiths essentially would have benefited them, because they had what they needed for what they were doing. And the major things that affected the fall of the Egyptian dynasties and whatnot, essentially, had nothing to do with lack of technology, because they had the technology. I just maybe if speculatively, if they had blacksmithing back then, like genuine blacksmithing like we do, the pyramids would have probably been made out of iron, but they would have brought them up in space with the aliens that were there and used cold welding, vacuum welding, fluxless vacuum welding, to put them together and then land them back. Sorry, I had to get two people with that one. Had to get Roy with the vacuum welding, and I had to get cold welding, and I had to get Adam with the aliens.
Yeah, let me posit you one further. What do you think? Where do you think they would be had they industrialized?
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're talking thousands of years before the Romans.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's pass the mic over to Adam, who is just, that vein is popping. I'm gonna get yelled at here. All right.
No, I'm not going to yell. I think that, like I said, I can't say with confidence that the ancient Egyptians didn't have iron. It's speculatory at the moment because we don't have the evidence that they did. There's also no clear evidence that they didn't. There is the potential that they may have had access to some form of terrestrial iron from a much, much earlier period than when we have discovered. That said, if they did, all right, let's work on the speculation that they had access to, you know, uh, iron in the pre-dynastic and early dynastic times. I don't think that, well, even if they did, because of the religious and cultural significance of iron at that period, particularly being related to the gods, there'd be no difference in society today, even if they had blacksmithing, simply because we're at where we're at today, whether they had blacksmithing or not. Now, if that cultural significance for regular or terrestrial iron hadn't existed, right, and it only had been for meteoric iron, then we may be in a different position today than where we could have been. However, as we know of human nature, if someone can make something fake and pass it off as something expensive, they will.
Yeah.
So even if all those people that had access to or discovered iron accidentally, knowing the significance of meteoric iron to religion and to cultural and even financial, because it was more expensive and more valuable than gold, they would have marketed it like that. So it didn't make a difference. But like I said, going back to my presupposition was that if there wasn't that cultural significance on it, then the world may be in a different place, because we would have been 2,000 years earlier in the production of iron, which means that there would have been major geopolitical changes throughout history. The Egyptian probably would have replaced the Romans in being a global conquering force, because they
Right.
had technology which would have been way more advanced than anything else at the time. They would have been using iron in what was a copper age. So they would have been two levels of advanced on every other society known at the time, if not more. In addition to that, then there's a good chance that things like an industrial revolution and all that type of thing also would have happened several thousand years ago, which would have completely changed human trajectory as we know it. So we would there is a good chance that we would quite possibly be at least maybe a level 2 society, if not a strong level 1 society right now. So simply because like we're talking about discovering and using iron 5,000 years ago, not 2,000 years ago like the Romans, which would have put us as a level 1 society, but 2 to 3,000 years before that. So that would have advanced us much, much further, particularly if you compare to how far we've come in the last 300 or 400 years. We've ridiculously come mind-bogglingly fast compared to millennia beforehand. So that's where I think it is. It doesn't really make much of a difference because of the cultural significance. But had that one thing changed, cultural and religious significance changed, we'd be in a very, very different position now. So yeah, but so I missed what Matthew said.
Matthew had said,
The trade
was there
between
not trade between Egypt and other kingdoms? Isn't that a form of industry?
yes,
Yes, fair point. Yes, but when we're talking
yeah,
industrialization, we're talking about
mass
what we would
production.
mass production, industry.
Mm.
Now, like I said, I just wanted a brief speculation on that, just to tie that together.
Yep.
And I hate to say it, unfortunately, that leaves us not a lot of time to do a full wrap up. So our final thoughts will include the wrap up, and we'll go a little long on the like our instead of the final thoughts for the show, just final thoughts on Egypt and metallurgy in general. So yeah.
I'll kick off because Alexis is currently looks like she's reversing up at the moment. So my takeaway and wrap up of Egypt. Egypt is massively fascinating. I mean, we've been studying it. We've been studying it since the ancient Romans. The ancient Romans were
Yeah.
investigating ancient Egypt, So we've been studying ancient Egypt for 2,000 years. There's something magical and intrinsically intriguing about this civilization that has spanned for 5,000 years, continuously operated as an independent nation for 2,000 years. Sure, it's been under different rulers and all that type of stuff, but it has been a recognized nation for time immemorial, time before recorded history. In a sense, they started recording history. This was a civilization that existed during the ancient Sumerians and the Babylonians, and this was a culture that looked and lived through all of that. If some of those monuments can talk to the stories that they could tell,
I know.
the metallurgy and the glasswork. Sure, that's we've discovered that they discovered things and then lost technologies and then rediscovered things and lost more, and we're figuring out some of the abilities that they had in a time that we didn't even think they were able to do things like that. The construction of the pyramids and the several different phases of those pyramidal constructions. From the earliest pyramids that are in down towards Sudan, and then all the way to the Great Pyramids of Giza. These were the cutting of the granite and sandstone. That I found out about the black sands of the Egyptian, the Nile River Delta. That was massively interesting to me to find that they could have had a abrasive in order to cut through granite and all that type of thing from an early period that had nothing to do with importing it from Greece. That was majorly interesting. And then the speculation that we've had about how they did that, with copper and brass or bronze instruments or tooling, which I hope that someone has had an attempt at already. I still intend on getting some at the moment, and
Yeah.
Yames, particularly with that garnet. I actually have access to a 30-pound or a 30-pound bag or 15-kilo bag of garnet, which I'm looking at getting. So I can send you some if you'd like it, just in a small package, because it's easier, nice and easy to ship, and that way you don't have to worry about buying a heap of it.
Sure.
So if you're interested, you can do that. If anyone else might be interested, let me know. I'll just get postage from you so that I can ship it to wherever you are in the world. But yeah, that might be just something like 500 grams, which is half a kilo. That is, it's 2.2 pounds to the kilo, so that will be about 1 pound.
YouTube, we're talking garnet. We're talking garnet, not kilos of. Yeah, we're talking garnet. YouTube, don't demonetize us for this.
Yes, garnet. Yeah, garnet. The abrasive gemstone, which is used in sandblasting and stuff like that. But yeah, so if anyone's interested, send an email to impracticalblacksmith@gmail.com, so that that way we can all see it. And if I don't happen to see it before Yames or Sully, they can get on to me about it. But yeah, depending on the amount of interest, of course, I will look into buying a larger bag. I mean, it's relatively cheap for me anyway, because the place that I'm looking at getting from has multiple bags that they're getting rid of for ridiculously low prices. It was an overstock, so it's all good. But yeah, so but yeah, Yamas, if you're interested in that, yeah, hit me up later and we'll talk about it. But yeah, so the ancient Egyptian technology is something we've been studying for thousands of years. Their culture, they had an extensive written language that we could watch. We've watched evolve over time, not just our understanding of that language, but from the different periods of history, we've watched, like even like I just said about the how iron was once one word and then it evolved into another word which was an extension of the original one. We've watched that language evolve, or we could see that language evolve through their written documentation over that period of 2,500 years from the initiation of their culture right up until Roman times. We've also got the Egyptians also provided us with the massive cultural understandings in the sense of the what's it called, that stone which was written in Greek and ancient Egyptian, and
The Rosetta Stone.
they had like the Rosetta Stone. That was an Egyptian thing. So we had it's only through that culture that we had access to something like that, which also gave us understanding of the hieroglyphics and how they translated into other languages. Of course, that was a later thing than their earlier language, but that also gave us a basis on being able to understand earlier forms of ancient Egyptian. So like the ancient Egyptian culture to this day, just like the Romans, is intertwined into so many things worldwide, and I find that fascinating.
Oh yeah, and to piggyback on that too, for my final thought / wrap up, it is amazing what we've learned, not just like the academia over the past. Oh, here comes the rain. Oh damn. In a minute, I got to stand up and shut my windows. It is amazing what we've learned, not just through academia and as they've picked it up. Like, because I remember back when I was a kid, since I was a kid, there's been so many changes to, our understanding of Egyptian culture. It's a constantly growing field. It's I think one of the most researched and archaeological dug up culture or eras out there, and some of the things that we've discussed in these shows, discussing speculation and whatnot, and how they built the pyramids, for example, how they cut the stones. I've learned a lot of stuff that I didn't even think about, like, oh yeah, using making a copper or bronze saw. And I'm thinking, when I think of that, I think of like teeth, and I'm like, oh, those teeth would chip off, or those teeth would wear down so fast. But then no, using the stone as an abrasive, and the tool is more of a way to push the abrasive. So the abrasive is doing the actual cutting, and the steel or the copper is just being soft enough to grip it and push it along. That blew my mind. And even what Alexis had brought up about building the boats around slabs, waiting for the building all these boats around these cut pieces of stone during the dry season, and then waiting for the wet season for the river to come back and basically lift these barges up and then move them. Like, I grew up being taught that, oh yeah, they threw logs under them and had a bunch of slaves pushing them. It's like, yeah, that's not what they did. And then the other day or the other week, getting into the discussions about aliens and levitation and magnetism and all that. It's fun for me. It's when you can use your smarts, when you could use your logical brain a bit, while also mixing in some of that creative thinking and out of box thinking. I love it. You know, it's like it's what I do for work. It's what I do for fun. It's a lot of, you know, that art plus science. Like, what is a creative way to use science to achieve a goal? I love that we've learned that, you know what, while they were thousands of years distant from us today, you know, a millennium between us, not a Millennium Falcon, a millennia between us, you know, they are still have that mindset of the modern man, of what we call modern man, you know, and that's just, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to me. So, yeah, like it's, I really enjoyed the topic of Egypt. Not that I'm a big proponent or particularly enjoy Egyptian culture. I'm not like a fanatic of Egyptian culture or nothing like that. I wouldn't be one of those types of people that get the Eye of Ra tattooed on my arm or nothing like that. It's just the history itself is fantastically entertaining to me. It's interesting to me. So yeah, you know, and while we wait for Alexis to get into position, you know, I'll continue. I really hope that you, the chat, and you, the listeners, you know, those of you who consume this content with us week in and week out, enjoy it as well. Because I mean, you know, while we choose to do this, we really would like you guys to be entertained. And you know, like we always say, if you have any thoughts or comments or, you know, suggestions or ideas or whatever, you know, you can email us at impracticalblacksmiths@gmail, and or you could hop on the Discord and let us know your thoughts and feelings, you know. And yeah, you know, so
All right.
yeah.
Well, whilst Alexis is, you know, still finishing off her load there, I will do the outro in the sense of thanks for joining us. You can find Yames on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Island Metal Forge. You can find Alexis at Transcendental Artist Studios on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can find me, Adam, at Speargrass Forge on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Don't forget, if you have any suggestions for the Tool of the Week, Metal of the Week, or any other topic, you can leave under the hashtag Metal of the Week in the YouTube community chat on our Discord, or you can email us at impracticalblacksmith@gmail.com. If you found us on Anchor, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, or Google Podcasts, we generally upload every Wednesday, or you can join us live every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's currently 11:30 p.m. Australian Central Standard Time, but check that against your local time, and that's at the Island Metal Forge YouTube channel. Finally, thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, or leave a star rating if you found us on one of the podcasts. And we really do appreciate your support. The aliens won't do it for us, so we have to rely on you guys.
Right.
And it looks like Sully might finally be available. So let's hear Sully's final thoughts before we wrap up for tonight.
Got just a second to say, hey, if you know what, get out there, have fun, build something interesting. If you can't be good at it. So I got to go. I'm busy as all get out.
All right, I will take a moment and say yes. Jack Pine's Blacksmithing, I believe, goes live for some forging in about an hour tonight. At 6 p.m., I will either be able to bring my phone out there. However, with this storm, I may not even be able to run the internet out there. So if I go live tonight at 6, it might be sitting here talking to you guys again. And if that's what it is, anybody is welcome to hop on the Discord and kind of just, you know, shoot the shit about blacksmithing, you know. So yeah, I'm just looking at the weather, and it is pouring rain right now, you know, so
it'll clear up by this evening, mate. You'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm looking at
It's
this.
coming. It's coming into wet season down towards Florida and stuff like that, isn't it? So you might be getting that residual, rain up your end.
Yeah, it's just a cluster of clouds moving in because we've got a nor'easter that came through. So it's kind of, yeah. Anyway, it's a soaker. We'll see how the weather clears up tonight, and hopefully I'll see y'all this evening. Y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us. Could not do this without you. Big ol' hearts.
Bye.
Bye.